So I know that this was happening in the mycorrhizae world, but is it happening in the saprophytic world as well?
Yes. Yeah, a
Wow.
lot of the it certainly is. The group, and it's interesting. The group that does it is the Zygomycetes. Okay, so this is a primitive group of land fungi. They don't have any swimming stages, so they're not aquatic, but they're very simple. They tend to be, I mean, they're oftentimes called sugar fungi because they'll grow on strawberries and sometimes they'll grow on feces, stuff with simple nutrients in them, right? Fruits and things like that. They'll grow on fruits, but they're not complicated in terms of they don't have the ability to break down wood or even cellulose, right? They're basically sugar. So we didn't think they did anything, but when we look at them with these histochemical stains, they're full of bacteria, and we can detect the reactive oxygen around them. We can detect nitrogen around them. So it's evident that they're actually appear to be getting some nitrogen and probably other nutrients from bacteria that they internalize from the soil. And they're everywhere. The mycorrhizae are from this same group of Zygomycetes, right? The glomalin, the VA mycorrhizae, they're actually diverged off of this Zygomycetes group. And they're considered in the greater Zygomycetes, they've been considered to be in that group for many, many years now, even though people keep floating them back as a separate group, but they really are in that group.
So this is the Oomycetes, right? I always screw up that pronunciation.
Not the Oomycetes. Those are aquatic. Those are typically aquatic. That's an aquatic group. We don't know if they're doing this or not. The Oomycetes. We don't know. We don't know. We know we can see the bacteria in the Zygomycetes and Ascomycetes and in some Basidiomycetes, but we don't know about the Oomycetes. It's a kind of a separate group, but it's interesting. But you know what this does, Leighton, and this tells us, I mean, to me, how little we really know about how these organisms are working. You know, including plants and fungi. Let's add to algae. Algae. I don't know if you knew the latest one of the latest studies we did on rhizophagy. Is we looked at algae, and as it turns out, roots can actually absorb algae into their root tips, and they degrade the algae with superoxide, with reactive oxygen, get all the nutrients, and we can see when roots are doing this, they will turn green because they absorb the chlorophyll. So you get green roots when they're absorbing algae into their roots. And the other thing that happens is algae also will have their own endophytes and their bacteria that they carry inside them. And so when the plant absorbs the alga from the soil, it gets the nutrients in the alga. Most of that appears to be fully degraded, like chlorella is an example. Chlorella. But the endophytes in the algae aren't fully degraded. Instead, they go out of the alga and they go into the plant cells. So the plants then are able to then get these endophytes from the algae in the soil that they absorb. And that was a quick little study that we did for a company. I'm not mentioning any company names here, but it was a cool outcome. And the rhizophagy cycle can involve more than just bacteria, and even fungi can involve algae, and even possibly blue-green algae. We don't know yet, but it certainly green algae, because that's our evidence that we have for that experiments.
Is penetrating, coming into the cell wall the same way as in the rhizophagy cycle?
Exactly the same way.
Okay.
Exactly the same. Yeah. No, it was really interesting. The process is broadened
Mhm.
because these plants can absorb algae from the soil as well, and
Wow.
it is really amazing. It is amazing, and the the chlorophyll just goes into the plant cells. And the other thing that happens when they're eating algae, when they're absorbing algae into their root cells, is that besides turning green, uh, the roots they also uh, appear to have another effect. They appear to be more to absorb uh, more bacteria when they do that, to take in more. We say that it's kind of like humic substances. When plants detect humic substances, what they'll do is they'll start to take in more bacteria. And we think that's a signal to the plant. The humic substances is a signal that there are microbes degrading plant material. Humic substances happen to be the breakdown products of plant material by microbes, right? So when plants can detect that, it's a signal to the plant that there's microbes there that have nutrients from plants, from degrading plants. So they start to take in more of the microbes, and we can see that. Well, the same thing happens when you feed them green algae. They start to take in more bacteria. There is this similar humic substance effect, and I think this is why the green or the brown algal extracts work. People have algal extracts that they put. Well, it's probably something in the algal extract, and it may have to do. I mean that we may see the same thing when we give them these green algae. You know,
Are,
yeah.
are they taking them in as endophytes or taking them in as part of the rhizophagy cycle?
The bacteria that they're being taken in part of the rhizophagy, because they're degraded. They are actually degraded when they go into the roots, into the root cells. They're broken down, and at least most of them appear to be broken down. We can actually see that when the alga goes in, the plant hits them like chlorella, right? Green alga. They hit them with superoxide, and then the first thing that happens is the chlorophyll starts to vanish from the alga. And that may be that the superoxide, the reactive oxygen, is breaking the chlorophyll down. The other thing that happens almost simultaneously is that the bacteria that were in the alga begin to jump out. Jump out. They don't have legs, but they begin to go out of the algal cell, and we can see them forming little halos around the algal cell. And then eventually that algal cell vanishes, but those bacteria stay inside and they're replicated. Yeah, it presents a picture of plants as as attracting not only bacteria and yeasts, but also green algae. So the more diversity of life you have in that soil, the more plants are going to be able to get to it. And you get, something like an alga, this is like, this is they're autotrophs, right?